That city there, that is Cincinnati. And right across the water, Covington, Kentucky. Tonight I'm going to park myself right here on the border between them and do something that sounds, well, a little ridiculous. Sit and watch a clock. So here's why. When I started this 50 states in 1 year, I needed a number. Some way to know I've actually been somewhere and not just driven through it. I found the idea here on these 2 New York Times travel series books called 36 Hours. 36 hours to get the feel of a place. That felt about right, so it became my one rule. 36 hours, minimum, in every state. Most of the time, like in Alaska, I was there a week, that was easy. But this time, not so much. But that's tonight. This day started 100 miles away from here, in the snow. So let me take you back to that morning.
So I find myself walking down a little path here to a place called Cedar Falls. It's probably the shortest hike I've ever been on to a waterfall. Parking lot's right up the hill. I'm the only person here. I'm walking on a snowy and icy path. Walking onto an icy bridge, and there's the falls. Oh my God, couldn't be any closer. Check this out. So recently I was in the Smoky Mountains and I was on this path to a waterfall that was, I don't know, maybe it was 1.5 miles long, mile. It felt like 3 miles, but there was a lot of people on it. And when I say a lot, by the time I get to the waterfall, I had my tripod and everything. I didn't even take a shot because it was one of those Instagram versus reality places where you've seen pictures of what it's supposed to look like and you get there, you can zoom in on the waterfall, but then if you go wide you'll see that there's like 400 people there. I'm the only person here. I'm so blessed. Check out this place. I'm loving it. You know, when you're my age, you obviously realize that this is a very unflattering angle. But you could care less. I'm the only one here. Cedar Point Falls, something or other. I'm in Ohio and loving it. If I see nothing else today whatsoever, then this day has been a success, because this place had everything that I wanted on this trip, and that was, just whatever. It's waterfalls, it's snow, it's solitude, nature. God, I'm so lucky.
So getting back to this 36 hours thing, it sounds like an easy achievement, especially when you're staying for 2 nights. But in this trip out, I planned on visiting 3 different states by staying 5 nights. And it gets a little tricky, especially when your first flight's delayed by 10 hours. Yeah, I've got to time this to the minute. That was in the back of my head almost all day. The sun is rising over there, and there's a little bit of a haze in the air, and the sun is shooting, kind of going between clouds, so it's not really that bright. And it's another amazing morning. And the journey to see all 50 states in 1 year. We're really tight on that this go around. I talked a little bit about that in my journal this morning. You know, if you stay 2 nights in a location, you'll easily hit the 36 hours plus. Well, I kind of laid this out, and I pushed it when I did New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I did them in 3 nights, and there's like this awkward time. Like at the beginning, I was in New Jersey, and then at the end, so I had to spend a lot of time making some hours up, and I eventually did it. And I had this timed perfectly. I had a few hours to spare. Yeah, I had it timed perfectly, but then my flight was, 10 hours delayed. I was stuck in Atlanta for a long time. So it's going to come down to the wire. I think I'm going to have exactly 36 hours in both Ohio and Kentucky. And the only way I'm able to do that is to park myself right in the border and watch the clock. So the hotel I'm staying at is right in the water. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that later and what my plans are as I head down toward Cincinnati and Covington, Kentucky. But in the meantime, we have a little bit more exploring to do here in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Anyway, back to the story. I've got a ton of footage here. I have to be honest with you, I'm really trying to clean this thing up with a scalpel. I've got tons of driving footage, some rambling to the phone. None of it made too much sense. I made one more stop here in Yellow Springs to actually try to find the Yellow Spring. I think this is it. My camera settings were way off. I'm completely blowing out the highlights here. Cut all that out, as Frank would say. I also want to take this moment to kind of back up a little bit, share some of the iPhone images I captured through the day. You know, as a lighting designer, this really reminded me of some of the gobos I used to use all the time, and these textures. And by the way, this place here was called Clifton Mill. I'm not sure if I got that right earlier in this edit. And of course, the waterfall. Don't you love the hat? And then again, I think this was the actual Yellow Spring. Not totally sure on that. And again, always looking for light and texture. So after a quick drive, I ended up, again, I don't even know where this was. I'd have to go back and look at the map. Doesn't really matter. It was a frozen over lake, kind of a reservoir actually. It reminded me of something that happened when I was a kid. I was looking over that ice thinking, should I? Should I walk out there? Yeah, I still remember that day. So I was talking to a couple up here that were overlooking the frozen lake. Reminds me of when my brother and I went out on the lake in Moraine State Park. I was young, maybe 12 or so. Fell into the ice, fell through the ice, into the cold water. And I was just telling that story to this couple that we were looking down. I guess it's supposed to be around 4 inches is what the guy said. Safe walking thickness. But anyway, I'll probably tell that story in another episode. I'm going to go up and hopefully do some ice fishing with my brother, and my sister's going to come down. At least that's the plan when I do Michigan. And
We'll tell that story in another episode. But anyway, kids were sled riding here. I watched one go down. It was like a really nice hill that goes down and then banks to the left. And he almost just took his sister out like a bowling ball. It's pretty close. She got nailed a little bit on her arm or on her leg. But yeah, I was thinking about taking the drone out, but I didn't want to break the peace and quiet up here. We're sitting, looking out over the lake. Again, they say that it's not normal to have this kind of snow on the ground, and this lake hasn't froze over for several years. I think he said back in the 70s, it was like the late 70s, that the Ohio River actually froze. It's a strange year for weather. It's a unique year. I just said enjoy it while it's here. I said, what's the forecast over the next couple of weeks? And it says, oh, it's going to warm up. So they got a front row seat. They're up there on the hill. The frozen lake. I'm going to come down here to the right and get closer to the ice. Don't worry, I'm not going out on the ice. Although I didn't think about it. Of course.
I know what you're thinking. This is boring. I agree. I'm bored. He's bored. We're all bored.
We are all bored.
So I just checked into my room. I've already got one little camera doing a time lapse. And originally she had me down the hall. I couldn't even see this bridge. But I had her move my room. Well, the window's a little dirty for time lapse. But that's my view. Freaking love it. Of course I can get down there and take photos too, but anyway, I'm gonna head in and I want to get this shot tonight with the lighting. Anyway, I want to head in and try to hit the museum. I think I have time. Let's go.
You know, not to keep beating a dead horse about this 36 hours thing, but just want to mention that, you know, so many people, friends and family, were listening to me back home harp on about this challenge of trying to, you know, put an amount of time that I needed to be in the state. And some of these close trips like this, they kind of laughed and they're like, well, you know, who would know? The reality is nobody would, but I would. I mean, if you can't follow your own rules, you know, what can you follow? Anyway, as you can see, I conveniently parked myself right here in the water so I could conveniently pop back and forth, you know, to dinner, to whatever, to make sure that I got those damn hours in. Nice bridge, by the way. I think this is the same guy that designed the Brooklyn Bridge. Anyway, I'm on my way to the art museum, and what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to share a couple of sheets here. I actually typed all these up. These were all of the plaques that were next to the art pieces. I picked out about 20 that I really liked, and then I'll just kind of flash through them on the screen. So if you want to do a little research, these are the names of the pieces right here in the order that I'm going to present them. But before we get into that, here's one of those pieces that, well, I don't like for whatever reason. Anyway, enjoy the art. I'll see you on the other side. You know, for somebody that said they were going to trim this episode down, I sure am dragging this thing out, aren't I? I love these museums, though. I mean, this is kind of a little selfish segment that I put in here. I hope you enjoyed some of these pieces. The photography wasn't that great. It was with my iPhone, obviously. And yeah, go back and study some of this work if you're interested. You can go back and freeze frame the 2 little documents that I shared of the names of all the pieces. So I'm driving through this neighborhood now. The art museum actually sits up in Mount Adams, which is Cincinnati's oldest neighborhood, perched on a hill like a European village that wandered off and settled above the Ohio River. I didn't write that, of course. Nothing like wandering through some winding streets after a quiet hour with some beautiful paintings and a little Beethoven. This is exactly the slow, civilized afternoon I didn't know that I needed. A little fun fact about this neighborhood, though. Apparently, this area helped launch American wine. From what I've read, Nicholas Longworth grew grapes on this hillside and became the first commercially successful winemaker in the United States, and has been called the father of the American wine industry. He called this vineyard the Garden of Eden, which is how Eden Park got its name. Another little fun fact, I was wandering through this area, and for somebody who was out looking for deer in several parks throughout Ohio this morning, it's kind of odd that I actually found a deer here in the park, on a sidewalk. He was kind of looking at me like, what are you doing here? Well, it was a nice afternoon, but it was time to head back to the hotel and drive out of this area. Turns out the hardest part of any city isn't finding its beauty, it's sometimes finding the exit. Out of a section that's built for horses. In a town I've never driven. With a GPS, let's just say very confident and almost never right.
There's just too much to see.
Then at the next one, turn left.
What light? Thank God it's a Sunday.
Use the middle lane to turn left onto Reading Road.
Middle lane? There's only 2 lanes. How can it be in the middle? I wish there was more sun in my eyes. Frank's like, yeah, if you have enough time, you should check out the zoo. And I'm like, oh, let me look at the zoo hours. Like, oh, maybe I could squeeze that in the morning before I go to Lexington. Really? I'm in an area called...
3/4 of a mile.
You know what's funny is if I wasn't saying anything and I needed a turn announcement, I should be sleeping. I'm totally sure why I'm videoing. Look at that guy, just ran the red light.
Then use the right lane to turn left onto Vine Street.
Right lane to turn left.
At the light, use the right 2 lanes to turn onto Walnut Street.
Which way? Oh, no.
At the roundabout, take the second exit onto Court Street.
What the hell's going on here? Like, these driving videos are just absolutely riveting. Good Lord, I have no idea where I'm going. Let's get 17 terabytes of footage of him going over this bridge. Welcome back to Kentucky. Covington, to be exact. Look at the hair, huh? Yeah, I got a shower before dinner. Anyway, I normally do an image of the room when I have a view like this, but I got 2 cameras up here doing a time lapse already. I wanted to turn off all the lights because we're getting reflections back, and I think I'm gonna set up 1 more camera and maybe do a little tight composition on Cincinnati. Yeah, that's what we got going on. And if it comes out and it looks halfway decent, I'll share it with you right now.
Well, the evening found me in Ohio, in Cincinnati, downtown, for quick dinner. It's kind of cool. They had this fountain area here downtown covered with an ice skating rink. This guy wasn't having a good experience, but anyway, I had a good dinner here right off of this square. I think it's called Fountain Square. I remember having a phony Negroni, I think it's called, a non-alcoholic drink. Oh my gosh, it was good. They're expensive, but they're good. I didn't have much to say to close the day out, so I think we'll put a little capper on this episode here. I'm not sure how many times I crossed this bridge, but I always cross it with two sides of my brain, I think. You know, the left side was doing the counting, and the right side was doing what it does best, of course. Dreaming, thinking, planning, scheming. I'm not sure if I hit the totals that I needed for each state that night, but it was getting there. So I was asked, how do you see a state in 36 hours? And the honest answer is, you don't. You catch one or two things. Indiana gave me solitude and a few moments to catch the light. Kentucky greeted me with an interview and an opportunity to chase the story. And tonight, a nice warm place to capture these time lapses. Ohio gave me a waterfall with nobody else there. You know, I gave myself this entire year to try to find my next chapter. Turns out it's not about counting the hours. It's about being awake for them. The left side of my brain, though, is reminding me of something. I still do need to catch a couple of hours in Ohio. I'll have to do that tomorrow morning. And that'll be on next week's episode. We'll finish it up there. I'll see you then. And again, thanks for stopping by.